Hey everybody, welcome. This is our episode 5th of the Design System Field Guide. Very excited to have this one. I guess I'm gonna start by adding people. So, hey Chris, how are you doing?
Hey, how's it going? Good to
Good,
see
and
you.
you? You're very low on your on your camera.
I know. I've actually been having camera issues all morning, and so here, I'll just sit up higher. There we go.
And then Catherine is here. Hey Catherine, how are you doing?
Hey, I'm doing well. How are you guys?
Yeah, we're good. And we're very excited to have somebody, a very special guest today. Gina, and hey Gina, how are you doing?
I'm well. How are you?
Yeah, we're good. I'm actually going to put you like on top if I can. Can I do that? Yeah, I can. Yeah. Woo. I mean, I feel like I should present you, but at the same time, should I? Because I feel like if anybody's looking at that live stream right now and don't know who Gina is, I feel like why would you be here? Anyway, there's a Venn diagram of like people that don't know Gina are still like no design system. I don't know, maybe. So in a GIF, Gina, you're the organizer of Clarity. This is mainly, I feel like, the main topic today. But like I feel like you've been the pioneer in design system, and obviously we can talk maybe if we want about that. I feel like everybody, I think you're like one of the main actor, I think, in this field, obviously. And yeah, so I don't know where we want to go with this, but obviously super excited to talk with you about anything design system, but I feel especially Clarity. And yeah, maybe we should actually start with that. Oh, Katharina is saying hi. So hi, Katharina. And yeah, obviously, if I see if we see interesting questions from anybody in the audience, we'll be also able to ask you those questions. So we're gonna talk about that. How's that sound, Gina?
Sure. Yeah, that sounds great.
Okay. Well, maybe we should start by the most important thing is that there is an upcoming event, Clarity 2023, November 1st and 2nd. And yeah, I mean, I'm gonna go bold and say that probably we're all gonna be there. And
Hope
so
so.
that's the first thing, I guess. Chris and Catherine, you have your tickets.
Oh yeah, I'm ready.
I have a sponsorship agreement to sign in my inbox, so I'm
As of yesterday, thank you for that.
yeah, of course, happy to help. Yeah, I'm very excited. So we'll be there with bells on, as they say.
Nice. Okay, cool. Gina, maybe we should start, from the beginning and say maybe you want to introduce like what is Clarity and maybe the origin story would be great.
Sure. Yeah, and if I start like rambling too much, feel free to jump in and ask questions or interrupt me. It's fine.
Gina, this entire thing started as me and Christoph rambling at each other. So
Oh, good. Yeah. So I actually bought the domain name for the event back in 2014, even though the event didn't actually happen until 2016. But back then, there wasn't any, there wasn't a conference for people that do design systems back then. And at that time, I'd been attending conferences, volunteering, I'd been speaking, and when I worked at Salesforce, I was even taking the role of like us sponsoring conferences and which conferences we were going to do. So like I'd seen like all sorts of different sides of conferences, and I'd been running meetups. And so at some point, I was like, I really want a conference for people like me, and so I put up a little, contact form to see if there was interest. And at first I got some backlash. I had some people that were like, really, you're going to do a whole conference about a style guide? And it's like, you've got whole conferences dedicated to like specific tools like WordPress or, a very specific library or, there's all sorts of very niche conferences. So it's like, why not? So kind of just figured, let me just give this a try, and had my first year, 2016, in San Francisco at the Alamo Draft House. And surprisingly, it actually went really well. And immediately people were asking, when's the next one? So I was like, oh, okay, I guess this isn't going to be a one-off thing. So then I did my second year again at the Alamo Draft House. And then I was getting a lot of requests like, oh, can you bring it to this city or this city? And so the third year, I decided to bring it to New York so I could move coast. So maybe that would give opportunities for people on the other side of the country to come. And of course, people traveling from overseas might have an easier time traveling to New York than SF. And then I brought it back to SF. I was thinking, oh, I'll just bounce it back and forth between the two coasts. Then of course, the pandemic hit, and I wasn't even sure if 2020 was going to happen. And then we decided to do an online event that year, and that actually went surprisingly well for us. And so we did the next year online as well. And then last year was in New Orleans, which is one of my favorite cities. Partly I chose that because I just really wanted to do it in New Orleans. I love that city. But yeah, and so that was the year we tried to do a hybrid event. And then this year is back in San Francisco, back at the Alamo Draft House in person. I will go ahead and talk about the fact that I know some people are disappointed that we're only going to be in person this year. It's a weird time right now for independent conferences. I'm in some Slack groups and message groups with other independent conference organizers, and it's really hard right now. And so this is really the only way we can make clarity even happen this year. And so unfortunately it is in person this year, but I don't really look at that as an unfortunately, because I do think that'll give a really nice intimate experience for those that are going. And then the plan is to still have videos released after the fact. So hopefully then people that can't come in person won't actually miss out on the content. So
yeah, as somebody that has run conferences before, I totally empathize with that.
Yeah.
It's so hard to do the organization, the planning, and then when you have a hybrid event, it doesn't even just double the work, it triples it. And so there's a lot of confounding things. I'm really excited that I'm able to attend and be there. And I totally hear it's a wild time for all of us still trying to come out of pandemic to figure out how to make all this stuff work.
Yeah, I mean, pandemic, layoffs, there's a lot of stuff happening right now. So I'm very, very grateful for those of you that are coming and participating. And I'm so excited to see a bunch of you in person.
So who can we expect to hear from when we're there?
Well, if you scroll down, Chris, we can show some of the faces as I mentioned them. But we do have Erica Hall, who is giving the keynote. I'm really excited about her. We also have some great speakers. Amy Lee. I can read through the list, or you can read them here. But there's a lot of speakers this year that are really passionate about accessibility, about community. That was one of the themes we wanted to really focus on this year, was community, bringing it back to the community. And there's a lot of design system conferences out right now, and some of them are more of a corporate event, and this is really about bringing it back to the people that are actually practitioners. And I'm really excited, and we might be adding a couple more faces on here soon, but to be announced. Just about that, to be announced soon.
So, okay, that's, you don't have to give us names, but that's already an information. Maybe there are more surprise guests. That's exciting.
Oh, and I should mention there's also 2 workshops, which coincidentally, I didn't plan for this to happen, but it's actually on October 31st. So it's going to be on Halloween. Nathan Curtis is doing operating design systems. And then Soren is giving a really great workshop on auditing your design systems and road mapping it for accessibility, which I think is something a lot of people are trying to figure out right now. And so I think it'll be a really good one.
That's great.
It's great. Great folks.
Yeah.
I think it's interesting how accessibility can be actually a very good selling point for adopting your design system. It's like it's one of the best example, I feel like, knowledge transfer through your design system is like, okay, doesn't give you necessarily, like automatically just your product is accessible because you're using the design system. Far from it, but it's a great way to jumpstart the process and say, if you use our components, at least like it's like a great way to get a first. So yeah, definitely looking for that.
Having just done this firsthand, just this past month, we use our own design system to power our design system for our product, which is like 3 layers of meta. Yeah, we got to go and do an accessibility audit of the knapsack software using our own design system, and our ability to make change like really, really quickly. That was huge positive steps for accessibility in our own app. I can't imagine doing it the old way anymore.
And organizationally, like at DoorDash, design systems use what was the owner of accessibility for a long time, and eventually, like that success allowed us to start an independent accessibility focused team. So that was something that design systems are a great way to get that into your organization for sure.
Yeah.
And I find sorry, go ahead.
No, I was just going to say that Amy is like giving us a comment that it's also like a good conversation starter with the engineers, and SEO is a good conversation starter with marketing folks. Yeah, all right, Amy. Thanks for adding this. Yes, Jina.
I was just gonna say, like, at least from my experience, I find that accessibility and design systems tend to kind of hold hands anyway, because there's a lot around quality and standardization and moving towards some of the same goals. And so like I find sometimes accessibility and design systems even end up being part of the same umbrella. Like when I was at Asana, I actually was managing designers across both accessibility and design systems. And obviously the goal was to hire on a new person to take on one of those teams. But at the time, it was like just spinning that up. It was like, well, it makes sense to be on our team. So I'm sure other organizations might face the same unless they've already got a fully staffed team.
Yeah, same thing when I was at Intuit. One of my peer was actually the lead accessibility, like the global lead accessibility for Intuit, and he was part of IDS, the Intuit design system. So yeah, totally. I want to be fair because we're talking a lot about accessibility and that particular workshop, but maybe you can tell us a little bit about Nathan, because obviously, like, if you don't know Jina and you don't know Nathan, I don't even know what what we should talk about. But Nathan is definitely like a big resource of like great concepts and ideas and like around design systems. So can you tell us a little bit about this particular workshop?
Yeah. So some people may have noticed that Nathan is a familiar face on the lineup because consistently, I think there's only 1 year that he wasn't participating, but he still came as an attendee. By the way, Nathan is the only person other than me that has been to every single Clarity. Just wanted to call that out.
Nice.
There used to be a couple others, but last year they got moved off the list, unfortunately, because they couldn't make it. But I still love you too. But Nathan, so I've actually sat in on his workshop a couple times, both online and in person. And I'm a big fan of the way he does workshops. Like he brings a lot of practical knowledge and experience. A lot of people, I think, might consider someone who's more on the consulting side of things to not have such a breadth of knowledge and experience as someone who's in-house. But Nathan will actually work with teams for long periods of time. And so it's like he is a member of the team. And so he brings a wealth of experience from all sorts of different types of projects and clients. So he brings that into his workshop, and just like all the fig jams and the different templates and documents that he has is really impressive. And so, some people might have already taken his workshop from previous years, but like, I feel like there's always something new that he brings because he keeps it updated. So if you're just looking for like more of like operationalizing and strategy and road mapping and things like that, he can really help with that.
Nathan's got this really cool brain that basically thinks like a design system. Just like he just internalizes this stuff. And so, like, following him since about 2016, a lot of like pioneering thinking in the space around how we think about structure for our own app. And I really do think that the templates and the structures and the ideas that he puts out there are really incredible.
Yeah. I think a lot of us consider ourselves like fans and advocates of design systems. And I hope this doesn't sound offensive, but he is a true geek for design systems. An absolute geek.
Aren't
and I
we
mean
all?
that with love.
I think he would wear that as a badge of honor.
Yeah.
Thanks very much. And yeah, I hope like it's going to be hard to decide. I feel like both of them happens at the same time. So yeah, I would say like it's going to be hard to choose, I'm guessing, but both sounds very great. I wanted to come back to not necessarily like something that I find is maybe not controversial, but I wanted to like get a little bit more into what you talked a little bit before, is because you were talking about how, like conferences, like Clarity is independent, it's like, it's not like organized by a company, right? Or by a corporation or something like that. And personally, as, like as the audience, I find it a plus because I actually want to make sure that, like what I hear is not just a sales pitch. But at the same time, I can see how, like it's actually harder than to organize because you don't have a whole organization behind it, right? So I think both, obviously, and we have Chris here that is also organizing conferences, and I feel this is great too. And the more content we have, I feel ultimately it's good for everybody. But do you have any like ideas of how ideally you would like the situation to be between, like, I think there's space for both, but how can we make that, maybe more so that both can exist,
Yeah. I definitely have some thoughts, some of which might be a little spicy around this, but I'm just coming at as somebody who has been on both sides. Back when I was at Salesforce, we did events too, but I agree there is space for both, and I think there's value in both. What I think is sad is when the bigger guy stomps on the little guy, and me, in this case, I'm the little guy. That kind of happened last year. I don't want to really like throw anyone under the bus, but there was literally a design system conference held the exact same week as Clarity last year, and we had announced our dates several months in advance. And a lot of the folks that would have gone to Clarity went to that event instead. And it was free because it was a giant corporate event. And I'm not going to name names, but you can probably guess who it is because there are only a few companies throwing design system conferences. But they took a lot of the people that normally would have been at Clarity. And because so many folks were that was about the time of year when the layoffs were starting to surge. And so a lot of people, independent people, don't have budgets. Even if you survived a layoff, budgets were getting cut at companies. So people are going to go to the free event instead of the community event. And I wish I could throw a free event, but it's just impossible because somebody has to pay the speakers, somebody has to pay the flights, somebody has to pay the venue, and a large part of that comes from either sponsors or ticket sales. We also saw a drop in sponsors because everybody was cutting budgets too. And so, yeah, last year was really hard for us. And it was, it's kind of why I started really like anchoring around this term indie, because I think there is a passion for still wanting to go to independent events, and I'm hoping that people still see the value in that and people still support that, because it's us, it's it's for us by us, so yeah.
No, totally. This is, for me, like, this is the main value, right? It's like and this is to a certain extent what we're doing right now. It's like we're just going, like, basically talking about what we're passionate about all together, and we're from like different horizons and companies and stuff like that, and we're not here to particularly talk about or like try to sell anything to anybody.
Yeah.
We're just here to talk because we're passionate about that topic. So yeah, it's interesting for me to hear you say that, like Clarity was like, like the not the main event in that space, because for me, like, Clarity is the main event in design system world. I get the fact that you don't have the firepower of like a company that making millions of dollars, obviously, but at the same time, yeah, it's for me, like, if you're into design system, it's like there's not really a competition there. But anyways, that's me, fan talking right now. So
Yeah.
I think what you're doing with this iteration of the event is really smart, which is like leaning into the intimacy and the very like in-person small community and bring that together. Because having been to like gigantic, enormous events, this year, I think there's something to having the space just for the particular cohort and space of design that we're in, to like have its own individual space with like a much more intimate group of people. So I think that's something that I'm super excited for personally. Like the big stuff is fun sometimes, but it can be overwhelming, and I kind of just want to be with this small group of what feels like friends in this small community.
Yeah.
I think that's the amazing part about it, right? Is the community building. I come from the world of Drupal, where we often talked about how our biggest strength that fought back against all the other weaknesses was the community of people. And it's some of the like one of the big tactics that we've taken with Knapsack is we try to be really clear about like, hey, this is something we're doing for the community, and then this is something we're doing for our business, and we're really transparent about that when we start talking about stuff. Like, for example, like I'm hosting an event in New York that's very clearly like this is a Knapsack thing. But then the Design System podcast, like, sure, I talk about Knapsack on it because it's my background, but the podcast is really about the value to the community. And that's why things like Clarity are really important, is we need to have that time where as professionals and practitioners, we can get together without the auspices of like, here's a room full of salespeople. And no offense to salespeople, I was one for a very long time. But the ability to actually like build those bonds and that connective tissue between the people that are innovating and doing really cool things in the space is so critical.
Mm-hmm.
Talking about community, maybe there's something that Jina you can talk about, is that, so obviously Clarity is a big community event, but then there's also the Slack workspace that you launched and organized, and now there's, I don't know how many people. Do you know how many people there are? There's thousands, but
Well, it's a 5-digit number, but not all those people are active. Like a lot of people create an account and then never come back, or they get locked out of their account, and instead of contacting me to fix it, they just create a new one, which happens a lot. So it's hard to really gauge exactly how many people are in there, but I think it was like current accounts that haven't already been deactivated from merging and all that stuff. I think it's around like 20 something. If you look at the announcement channel, that's a good way to know, because that's the channel everybody's in.
25,967.
There you go.
Yeah.
But yeah, but is it that, I mean, I'm just trying to like, I don't even know how you feel about that, like when you start something and then you have like, okay, maybe not 20,000 is not a real number, but even like 2,000 people, or 5,000 people.
It's been awesome. Like I still maintain to this day that in my humble opinion, it is the number one design system resource that we have.
For sure.
Just the people in there are so willing to share, willing to help. And I know I've got a couple other moderators. One of them I saw is on this call, Donnie. He's really great. I always appreciate you. But even before I added on more moderators, I found that the community was really good at moderating itself. And I think that came from having like a code of conduct from the early days and like really being firm on it throughout the years. And it just kind of, the community just kind of like leaned into it, and it was great. It started out with just like a handful of us. It's like, maybe it was like initially like 6 of us, and then it was like 12, and then people were starting to invite others, and then there was like this open source open form you could set up so people could just like create an account. So we had that set up for a while, and of course that's when all the bots and weird accounts started coming in, and so we had to kind of turn that off. So
There's some
I don't
Wild
know.
West moments there.
Yeah, so I don't know how many accounts are still around that are from that. I try to look for them and clean them out when I can, but otherwise, yeah. And now Slack does have where you can just have a link and anyone can join, but it expires after a number of uses, so you have to keep updating the link if you put it on a website or whatever. But yeah, and shout out to Slack. They sponsor the Slack now, and so we don't have to worry about, like, there was a little while where Dan Mall was sponsoring it, and then I was sponsoring it. And for that many people in a Slack, we're talking like it could be like $5K a month or more. Like it's a hefty fee. And Slack has always been more aimed at business use rather than community use. But I just think it's so cool that we were able to get them to let us have a paid account so that we can not worry about chat logs disappearing and things like that. And so thank you, Slack, for that.
Yeah, no, totally. I remember that phase, when we were like still on a free plan, and I feel like at some point you had a Patreon actually to like finance this a little bit.
It's still up, but now it funds other things instead, like the Mastodon. But yeah, so the Slack, like we have the Mastodon, but Mastodon's tricky because it's like with the more people you add, the more expensive it gets too. But I would say Slack is like the go-to place to be, in my opinion. Hey, Donnie.
And yeah, also I like the Slack community is amazing. That's awesome. Slack sponsors it. Yeah, I feel like it was such a big deal when this was. I remember when you announced it, I was like, "Wow, this is so cool!" But I feel like we don't talk about it enough anymore. But like talking about what we said earlier, right? It's like relationship between companies and like independent things or communities and stuff like that. And like this is the best example, right? It's like when actually some companies can do like a great can I say that partnership with independent events and communities and say, hey, sure, you can use it for free because it just helps everybody. So yeah, definitely. And now that Slack is part of Salesforce, I don't know. Maybe it's maybe they don't even know that this.
Don't tell them.
But then, okay, so maybe to go back to like clarity and the I guess the relationship between the two, because obviously if you have thousands of people in this community, and at the same time, like yes, this year Clarity is like in person, and I think it's like 350 people. Is that right?
That's the max we're aiming for. Yeah.
Yeah. And so, it's like what does, like, how do you, like, I get the idea of like, it's hard to like have a virtual event, but at the same time, I'm French. I moved to the US 9 years ago. I used to like look like everything that was happening, like in, like Silicon Valley or whatever. And I think at that point, Twitter was the only way for me to, like get really like understanding what was happening. So I feel, like bad for the people that, physically cannot come here. So obviously Slack is like a great community and it's global, but how do you see the articulation between the two? And maybe now is, one thing, but what would be like your ideal scenario?
I mean, I see them all as part of the same family. Like Clarity does have its own brand, but I also have the Design.Systems brand that I consider everything a part of. And I do have goals for like a more like, community resource out of that site. Like I've got a lot of stuff that I need to push live at some point soon, but in due time. But yeah, I see it all as part of the same thing. And I was like, at first I was like feeling weird about like, should I not promote Clarity too much so it doesn't seem biased? And then I was like, wait, this is all part of the same thing. It's all the same community. And so I don't feel so bad like promoting Clarity in there because I do feel like it's like the online element and the in-person element. They're like, just different aspects of the same community.
Yeah. And also in the Slack workspace, there is a channel for events, right? So like you can
and there's other events in there too. Yeah.
Exactly. Talking about events, and we talked about Donnie also recently, but it's actually a great segue for me to present the new awesomeness from I think Donnie and a couple more people. Josh, I think, was also part of it, and I feel like there was somebody else. But if you don't know this resource, it's a great way also to know what's happening. So ds.events. And obviously, I think we're here. Where are we? I want to. Yeah, there we are.
Nice.
So, but yeah, I think like if you cannot make it to Clarity, there's a lot of resources here. Remote, Berlin. It's like I think it's amazing to have that resource, honestly, but also to see what happens everywhere, right? It's like Smashing Conf, another great thing to go to. So yeah, I definitely recommend this. If you're not aware that this existed, I think it was just launched recently. But yeah, I think it's a great resource. So yeah, anyway.
No, and I'm excited to get some more local stuff going. I think that like having a global conference is amazing, and we need that like moment of gathering amongst people in the community. But how do you continue that spirit week by week, month by month in the interim? And I think that I've actually had a few folks reach out based on conversations in the last one of these about hosting local events. I'm eager to get started on that. I think Seattle is going to be my first one, and then while Demian doesn't know this, I'm planning on hitting him up to do one in before the end of the year too. And so trying to figure out how to pair what Clarity is doing at the global level with something that continues throughout the year at a more local or regional side of things. That's what I'm eager to see. And so I think that also like let's give Jina a little bit of a break from time to time so you don't have to be organizing everything about this community, and let some other folks jump in and put some time into building this. So I'm really excited to see that happen. And Donnie and Josh, thank you so much for this events framework, because it gives us a platform for this stuff. So it's gonna be great.
Yeah. Speaking of which, like I had plans to do an events page on the Design.Systems, and now I'm like, oh, that's one less thing I have to do. So, yeah, and I used to do local events as well. I have the Design System Coalition, but we have not had one since the pandemic started. So I would love to bring that back soon. It's really hard right now. Like a lot of companies either gave up their office, which is where we would host them, or they've really got tight restrictions now on who can come into the office. And so it used to be people were like, open doors, come eat our food, and like hear us talk about design systems. And we even had one that was like 300 people, and I was like, that's almost a conference right there.
Totally.
That was the one at Airbnb. So yeah, I would love to bring that back, but right now, let me just get Clarity off the road.
It's actually interesting because I feel like because Clarity this year is like in person, it's almost like like going the opposite way of like most of stuff, because I feel like most things now happen online, starting with this, right? It's like the backstory of like me starting to do like live stream like that. I used to have a meetup in Sunnyvale, and so at some point, when COVID hit, I was like, okay, so that is not an option anymore. Like, what can I do? And this is, kind of like when I started to do things online instead. And so yeah, I hear you. And, like another big thing that happened recently, I feel, is Design System Wednesdays. It
I
used to
was
be a
gonna bring them
meetup,
up. Yeah.
like it's so interesting because it used to be a meetup where we met. And
Yeah.
it's like it was, like every month we were going to a different company and just hang out and talk about like what we were doing. And like, what was it, like last month or something like that, like it ended up like doing
A
a one
conference.
day conference virtual for anybody, which is, like so funny to see like the evolution of this, for
Yeah.
sure.
It had a really cool premise too when it first came out. Like I think now people love to share, but at the time, like I think the first initial premise was like, let's just sit in a room together and co-work together. And
Yep.
so it's like everybody can just be working on their own design systems, but we're all in the same space. And then it kind of evolved into like people sharing and almost like a show and tell or like resource sharing thing. And then yeah, like unfortunately, I wasn't able to make it to the conference, but it looked like it was great.
Yeah. Well, all the videos are, I think, now
Yeah.
available online, but yeah. And Donna, who, like used to be also like came as a guest to Design System Social Club. But yeah, I feel like we need everything, right? Like we need every
Mhm.
scale, like low-key events, starting with like just meeting with somebody else, and
Mhm.
needing a coffee and talk about what we're doing. Because let's face it, I think this community also works because most of the time we're actually a very small number in our company dealing with this. So I feel like probably all of us need some kind of support group and being able to talk with like-minded people outside of our company to talk about like, hey, do you want to talk about design systems? Because nobody cares in my company.
There's also the idea of like fostering new members of a community. I mean, harkening back again to the Drupal days. The first time I ever gave a conference talk was at a local meetup. And now I have a podcast. And I don't think that I would have a podcast if it wasn't for that early experience at that local meetup. And so there is so much value in giving people a platform that are either earlier in their career or just starting out in a new field, to talk about the things that they're doing and to give them both that confidence and that opportunity to be vulnerable, to talk about the things that they're working on, to know that it's not this like deeply curated big hurdle that they have to cross, that in front of, you know, 15 people in Portland, Oregon, in like the back room of a bar, they can sit there and talk about the silly thing that they're working on and get a lot of support and feedback on that stuff. And I think that we're all still healing from 3 years of being like locked indoors. And so being able to push forward that room full of 15 people, that informal meetup where somebody that is just getting started in design systems can come with their crazy idea and be like, what do you think? I'm so eager for that.
Yeah, for sure. Um, Gina, I feel like maybe we can talk also a little bit about driving a community, because I feel like you have a lot of experience around that. And personally, I always thought that you were very good at, like making everybody feel included, but at the same time being firm around, like what was accepted or not accepted. And not, like not in a like it's hard to strike the right balance, right? It's like, hey, everybody's welcome, and at the same time, don't be an asshole. And excuse
Mhm.
my French. But yeah, like can you like I feel like this is an art, and it's very subtle. So is there any like how did you learn how to do that basically?
Honestly, I think it just came with time. Like obviously when it first started out, it was less of a concern because like most of the people that were in the group, like in the Slack, for example, like we all kind of like knew each other already, and we all respected each other. It's only when you start seeing a bunch of people join that you don't know, that then it's like, okay, like how open can I be, like how safe can I feel talking about certain things. And then I've seen a lot of communities spin up that just kind of fizzle out quickly, and a lot of that could be like it grew too fast, or it just kind of wasn't moderated well, or just yeah, like it could be a number of factors. And so I honestly think with this one, it was just because it started with like people that were passionate and cared about what we were doing, that we were able to kind of like grow it and nurture it together. So it really, I can't take the full credit there. Like it was a community of us doing that. And I see a very different thing that's happened with that versus I had also spun up a Twitter community for design systems. And initially I had it be invite only, but then that requires that somebody can, if somebody requests an invite, then it sends a DM to me personally, and then I can approve it. But I also don't have open DMs because I've dealt with abuse in the past. And like now I realize all those people that were sending me an invite now have access to DM me. And I think somebody told me if I like delete it, then maybe it might cut off their access, but it's a lot to go through. So I haven't gone through it yet, but like it just made me a little nervous. And then I found out, I think Twitter rolled out the ability to open up invites a little bit later. So then I opened it up, but man, the moderators are having a heck of a time keeping that place like as moderated. Like a lot of spam gets put through there, Bitcoin crap, like all sorts of like randomness that, you know, but the moderators are great because like I'll get a notification that says there's a post that needs to be reviewed, and I go look and it's already been reviewed. So like, whew, thank you, team. But I don't feel like, I think that was part of it because it was like open too quickly, too fast, versus the way the Slack grew. So yeah, anyway, the short answer is with time and enough people caring.
But it's a battle between access and moderation.
Yeah, because you want to open the doors. Like I remember one of the questions we asked is like, should we require only people that are in design systems, or could it be like a UI designer that's trying to learn, you know, or maybe it's a back end developer, but they're still interested. And so we decided to just be like open by default, but then moderate them out quickly if we need to.
Yeah, I found it also like so interesting because like it basically requires like serious leadership skills also, because obviously yes, there are the people that just use those communities, right, whether it's like Slack or Twitter or something like that. But as you mentioned, you have moderators in your team, and I'm guessing that those people are doing it on their free will and their free time, and you don't pay them. And it basically means that, you know, like at some point you're actually leading people without having any kind of, you know, like hierarchy be behind, you know, like behind it or supporting it. And that, like, you know, requires major leadership skills, I think. So yeah, kudos, like, you know, kudos to you to like make it work, because it's not easy. And you know, like my humble scale experience, you know, like organizing things like that, you know, it's like it's hard to you know, having people show up and be there on time and do what they're supposed to do. So yeah, I guess my advice is that for anybody that, you know, like wants to create, you know, like a meetup or something like that in their community, that's great. And also like know that you need to, you know, like find the right people, like having, you know, like being able to be a leader in that context. Like that's something that, you know, like start small, but yeah, it's also a great opportunity for growth, I think.
Yeah, I think the key word you said or phrase you said is right people, because like when you say leadership skills, it's not like I'm sitting there going, okay, Donnie, go like do this. Like I'm not like supervising anybody, but you pick people that are proactive and passionate about it and wanting to do it. And I mean, over the years, I've had a lot of people put their hand up saying, I want to be an admin for the Slack. And then I add them to the admins channel, and then you never hear from them. And so then
they just wanted to do it for the cloud.
Wanted to be on the list. Yeah, they wanted, and they wanted to put on their bio, I'm a, you know, admin. Yeah. It's like, but you're not doing anything. So it's like, you know, that list has changed over the years too. And it's like just keeping people that like, you know, care and like actually will, you know, do their part. Because yeah, it would be impossible for one person to do. So
yeah. That reminds me, actually, talking about picking people, a question that I wanted to ask you: how do you pick clarity speakers? Because I don't think there's a form or anything for somebody to say, "Hey, I have a talk."
I have a suggest a speaker form because there's always going to be new folks that I'm not aware of. But I don't do a CFP, and that was a decision I made in the early days. I just really wanted to make a curated experience of what. I mean, let's be honest, it's my event, so it's like, what am I interested in, And just by keeping it that way, like it's really helped with like having sort of like a narrative throughout the years. And I don't want it to sound like I'm trying to be like a control freak about it. That is why I have a suggested speaker form. Like I remember I didn't even know Tatiana Mack back in the days, and Vlad from Webflow actually suggested Tatiana, and that was, and then we became friends through that. They're great, but yeah, like, so it's like a way to have the best of both worlds. In terms of like how I pick people, it's like a couple different factors. Like one of them is like, what are the topics that I'm really interested in right now? Like this year, there's like a big focus on accessibility, because I think that's like, even though it's kind of been a thing every year, it's like, I feel like right now it's like one of the main problems people are trying to solve. And so there's a big focus on that. Maybe one year it might be, some other specific thing about color, or some specific thing about tokens, or whatever it might be. And then I find the person that I think would give that talk. Sometimes it might just be I go to a local meetup like Chris was talking about, and I see a talk and I'm like, holy crap, I need this person on the lineup. That happened when I went to a design system meetup at the Mozilla office. And I saw Jennifer Hom, who's she leads the illustration and creative efforts for that at Airbnb. I'm not sure if she's still there anymore. I think she might be. But like, I'd never seen a talk about illustration touch on all the things that a systems nerd would be into, like just like the really in-depth way of thinking through color and thinking through line weights and like all that stuff.
The cool juxtaposition, the idea of like the free form illustration and then the systematic approach to it.
Exactly. And so I was like, I got to get her. And so invited her, and that was a really good talk. Yeah. And so it could be that, or sometimes I might not even know if they're a good speaker, but they write like a really good blog post about something. And then I'm like, I bet this person could put this into a talk and it would be great. And a fun thing for me, which might be a little bit of a selfish thing, but I still love it, is when I invite somebody who's never spoken before, and then I see it actually launch a speaking career for them, because they end up getting asked to speak at more events. I get a personal satisfaction out of that. Like, it just makes me so happy.
No, I mean, as well you should. And I'm really glad that you include a lot of first-time folks. I think that, the idea of like, how do you keep something fresh and renewed without that, it becomes the same voices in the same rooms. And I think that's awesome.
Yeah. Absolutely. And I want to just like go back to what you said, like, given the fact that you're doing all those things, I don't want to say, like for the community. And I highly, highly doubt that you're making much money about like organizing Clarity and stuff like that. I think that at least you can have that perk to say, you know what, I'm going to pick the people that I want to hear about, or the topics that I want to hear about. I think that's fair. I think you can get that. So,
Yeah, I mean, to be honest, if I wanted to, I could bankroll the whole thing through selling talks. And, Chris and I have had conversations in the past about this, but every sponsor wants to talk. Like, that's their number one goal. And we've never had that as a thing, because there's only 12 talks. And if you have like 10 talks that are sponsors, like, what are we really doing for the community? It's just you're paying to watch demos of other companies. Not that I'm saying that's what, Chris's company would do, but you know what I'm saying? Like, it's just, that's the thing. Like, I've literally had sponsors walk away because they couldn't talk. And if I wanted to, I could probably have this very well funded. I could probably be well funded if I did that, but that's not what I'm out here to do. And so I really want it to be for the community, by the community.
Yeah.
Still waiting for Clarity Honolulu, Jina.
Well, we're almost at time. I think we have like more or less like 5 to 10 minutes left. And talking about demos, I know that like we usually have a segment in this live stream where we present cool stuff. So obviously, I already presented the Yes event, but I think Catherine found us like a really cool thing, and I want to make sure that we have time to actually look at it. So this is it.
Yeah.
Catherine, take it away.
Yeah, backstory. I'm helping advise and invest in a design systems infrastructure company, which all of us are certainly interested in. But they just released a new product called designpatterns.io/AI that basically allows you to use a design system that you can select from a list from, as well as a styling strategy, and then actually generate components from that and then iterate on those things. So it's really interesting, and I think a kind of tool that I see more front end engineers as well as design systems practitioners probably integrating into their workflow in the future. So like if you scroll down and see some of the existing sort of examples that they have, and you click into the birthday form, for instance, you can see what actually gets generated from a prompt, and then the ability to check it out in code and take it out, and then iterate on it with AI. So I think it's an interesting sort of approach to generating a starting point for a design or a component, and then taking your design systems understanding and skill set to actually make it something that you can bring into your design system. I think it's something that I've seen a few other companies, including Vercel's V0, sort of touch on. And I think there's going to be more of these kind of tools that front-end engineers and design systems folks are going to be using. So it's definitely an interesting, application of AI to design systems.
And we know that AI is like somewhat your thing recently. So thanks for sharing. This is really cool, I must say. And yeah, like the first thing that I want to do now is like, can I plug like my design system to this so that, like tomorrow when, like somebody wants. And usually, I don't know about you all, but I feel like this is just like a great way to have a starting point. It's like rather than having, like going from 0 to 1, it's like you have one thing and then you like look at it and then you have like a reaction to it. But yeah, I think this is a really cool tool, and I didn't know about it. So thanks, Catherine, for
the logo makes me want to say patterns.
Yeah, it's interesting like name, but they're iterating on
that. Come on, be nice.
I wasn't being mean, I promise.
No, Catherine, I typically want to talk to you more about this. Like we've been experimenting so much with like information discovery inside of design systems as a part of things too. But like the idea of like, how do you do prototyping or early stage design using code blocks that exist inside of your design system is a really cool idea. And honestly, I mean, I think we talked about this, I don't know, last show where we said that there's this future where a lot of the design work we do should be just the assembly of patterns. And so it's really cool.
Yeah.
Donna is suggesting patterns.
Sounds delicious.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'll share it with the team. I'm sure they'll be excited to hear some options.
Yeah. But yeah, it's very interesting, and something that I can share. I feel like you probably don't know, but so I work at Zapier on the design system. Talking about a name where you're like, so how do you use it? Zapier, what are you supposed to do? And it's because like there's API in it, so I think it's Zapier. I think I heard that is actually the official way to say it. Anyway, what is interesting and super Inception-like is also the fact that like Zapier is all about automating stuff. So obviously, when you're in the design system team and you're like, okay, how can we actually automate stuff to automate stuff? So it's interesting, and AI is obviously like a big focus for that team too. And so like maybe in the coming weeks we're gonna look at can we use Zapier and Zapier AI capabilities to actually like empower our design system users, which I think is super interesting. So maybe next time I have like more to share, but I think it's definitely a cool way to think about like how you can use AI inside of your design system. So yeah, we'll see what happens. anybody has like final questions or comments or thoughts, obviously here on the live, but also like if anybody on the audience, we have 5 minutes left. Final question to Jina before she goes to organizing the most awesome Clarity event ever. Oh, if nobody has, I have one. You're really great also at like with like swag stuff, and I want to hear like what are your thoughts this year. I think I have, look at that, I have boxes here.
I can't give away everything. Like I'm gonna let people be surprised. But yeah, big fan of fun swag.
Yeah, hint.
Yeah, like I remember the early days like of Clarity. All the sponsors would ship their swag to my home, and I would have boxes and boxes and boxes of stuff, and I was like, never again. So I've always leaned more towards minimal swag, but sponsors can bring their own stuff if they want. But for I'm a small person, so like carrying all those boxes, no more of that.
Get you a Clarity hand truck.
Yeah.
Pogs, man.
We had Pogs, and that is one thing you can look for this year. I want it to be a recurring thing because they're supposed to be collectible, right? So.
I will bring my what was it, a beanie, like the hat. I will bring my Clarity hat this year just to show, like.
I will say there's like, speaking of Pogs, there is a very like, I mean, you can see it in the video that's on the site, but there's a like 90s era
vibe,
kind of nostalgia element to everything. So
okay, well that's fun. Oh yeah, Clarity hat season for sure.
Yes.
At some point we'll have to have like a Clarity fashion show, where with all the different pieces.
Donna's Twitter still said at Clarity for the longest time. I think she just took it down like 2 weeks ago or something like that. I was like, oh, I kind of like seeing it still there.
This is her happy place. Clarity. This is where she wants to be. Okay. Cool. Well, thanks very much for being with us today. It was really fun. Chris and Catherine, thanks again for being there. And yeah, I think it's Donna has a comment. Wait. But anyway, it was very nice to have you, Jina. I guess I guess technically next time we're actually going to all see each other in person at Clarity in San Francisco. So I'm definitely looking forward to this. I think it's been like 3 years since I actually been, like in a conference in San Francisco. So I'm looking forward to that and meet you all there. And yeah, thanks, Jina, for organizing. Thanks for being there tonight. And yeah, we'll see you next month.
Awesome.
Good to see you all. Take care.
Bye.